hat at any point. And if you have perspective that you've learned through life, we are happy for you to share that as well. It's I like this to be organic and fun and just enjoy each other's company. So with that, if you don't know me, I'm Jacqueline Wittes. I overcame a really long employment gap to work at Microsoft, and I still have to pinch myself often when I get stuff with Microsoft swag logo on it. And now I just want to turn around and pay it forward to others who may be on a journey of career gaps, pivots, or just this one we're talking about, like, how do you hit that? How do you establish yourself as a leader when you're new to a team? And I'm going to probably feel like I wish I would have had this talk 3 years ago, because it's my work anniversary today. So I'm going to learn and then want to start over. But with that, I would like to introduce Lisa. We met each other through LinkedIn because you had a career gap as well, right? And it was kind of like, what do I do? So I tried then to help as much as I could. And before long, she was, not with my help, but before long, she was posting that she scored this great job at Disney. And as we were just talking before the call, how happy she is there. So I'd love to hear a little bit about your story, a brief introduction. And most of all, thank you for being here today. I really appreciate it.
I'm so excited. I love doing things like this. I am definitely a fly-by-night, off-the-cuff kind of person. So organic is best, unless I think where I'm kind of in my brilliance. So thanks for having me. And yeah, anytime you want to talk, I'm here. I would love to talk. I love to talk. In fact, I have to say also that I've had a cough this week. So if I cough at all, it's not COVID. I have tested multiple times, but no, it's just really bad allergies. So we're here in Seattle area, and we're just, full in bloom. So we're not going to complain about that. But anyway, so yeah, my story. So I started really young, getting my first job when I was 14 and a half. And believe it or not, I don't know if I've ever shared this with you, Jacqueline. My first real job was actually at Microsoft when I was 17. I was a receptionist, and I sat at the front desk. I don't remember which building it was. And it was, something, I had a really hard educational career, a really hard academic career. And that's for another show. But I was very, very good technically. And I, was typing 100 words a minute, when I was very young. So when I was like 11 and 12, I could already type pretty fast. So I got a job because I was a really good typist and I have a good personality, I must say, but at Microsoft. So that's where I sort of learned about corporate America and what it's like to work in an office. And I was just sort of hooked, at a pretty young age. And I had a full career, 12 years, a little bit more than 12 years before I met my husband, and in my early 30s, and we got married, and I had 3 kids really fast. And I, childcare in our area, while he is a principal level software engineer and he makes a good income, but it's expensive to put 3 kids in childcare. And so we made that choice for me to stay home. I was home for 6 years, which is, I think, almost 7 years, actually, which is a really long gap for today's standards. But because I had that sort of fruitful 12-year, career history, and I had worked at Microsoft, I had worked at eHarmony, I had worked at Disney prior to leaving the workforce, I had a resume established, right? So, but with that gap came a lot of imposter syndrome and a lot of things that happened. When I was trying to come back to the workplace, I thought, gosh, I'm just going to have to start over at the bottom, which, sometimes that is really the case. A lot of the time that's really the case. So I'm also very well networked. I have a lot of friends on LinkedIn, and I have a lot of friends I've made a lot of corporate friends who I've stayed friends with over the years. So I got really lucky, I think, sort of having that triad of, okay, I've had experience, I have friends, I have personality. I could type fast, whatever. And I was able to score a position back at Disney last year, so in 2021, during a pandemic, right? During COVID and working from home and learning everything like again at home without kind of having anybody around to help me. So
wow, that's such a great pivot actually to our topic, because you also onboarded remotely
yeah,
and still had to kind of establish yourself as a leader. So,
yeah.
I guess like there are thousands of books written on leadership. How would you define that?
What's funny is I have these affirmation cards that I pull every day just to like give me a little bit of confidence in the morning when I sit down at my desk. And the one I pulled yesterday says it perfectly. So I'm going to read that if that's okay.
Absolutely.
It says, I don't need a leadership title to show that I am a natural born leader. I am a leader with or without the title. So that's something that I actually agree as a part of my own, uh, which I was sharing with you earlier. I lead from every seat. So whether or not I have a title, if you're a leader, you're going to lead from every seat. And I think that that's absolutely how I would define it. I'm going to keep leading. If they take my title, I will keep leading, because I like the leadership is really it's a behavior, right? It's not a title. Excuse me.
I love that. I love that. So, all right, you were remotely onboarding, and you have wonderful cards that tell you you're a leader. So, what like, do you have any perspective on, like, onboarding itself is overwhelming. You're learning lingo and jargon and people and connections and all of those stuff. So, how would you like? Do you have practical steps on what you could do to kind of establish yourself?
Yeah, so I think communication is key. Being an over communicator, being versus being an under communicator. I haven't worked in an office for
Mhm.
that amount of time that I had a gap, and then I came back, and this is my office, right? Like I'm in my home office, like many of us are, if not all of us. So, um, you know, I am a fan. This is super like basic and like super low level, but just sitting and finding out like who is in my org. Let's have plenty of meet and greets. I am the coffee queen connection, so I will send you a virtual coffee chat. I will actually pay for you to have coffee with me if that's something you want, or whatever you like at Starbucks. And we'll just have a conversation. And sometimes it's just 15 minutes. A lot of time it's 15 minutes. Being a Finding authentic relationships at work. I think relationships are hard in general, in the workplace, but when you're removed from people, it can be harder. But there has been a barrier I've noticed that has been removed because we're really in these more natural environments. We're at home, we're maybe with
Mhm.
our family, spouse, partner, children, or pets, or whatever, where you feel more comfortable, you maybe feel a little bit more authentically yourself. And so that part hasn't been difficult for me because so many of those barriers have been removed, right? So I've made so many connections with people just sitting in teams, right? Just sitting in teams for 15 to 20 minutes. Getting yourself involved in BERGs, which is the employee resource groups, business, I think they call it business employee resource groups. I think that's the right term. I am a part of many internal BERGs where I get to be around people who are in whatever it is that I'm needing support in my community. So for women, for people of color, all of these different groups where I'm making connections
Mhm.
with them as well. And then, not everybody sits in the same group, or the same segment. So you can know what they're doing over at parks or know what they're doing, somewhere else. And that's been really helpful too. So the more people you know and the more people who know you, I think that really does establish you. And it creates, I dislike the term brand, but it sort of establishes your brand, and how you come across to, what are people saying in rooms that you're not in?
Yeah, that's a great point. It also, I just like, I know this doesn't do with to have as much to do with onboarding, but for those who are job seekers, you have that opportunity on places like LinkedIn or networking events to really build those connections as well. And like I follow a ton of people in different companies because I'm curious about what is their company doing, what's happening, like who's competing with in the Microsoft space in those same spaces. And then you can actually build the relationships just by liking and commenting posts. I try not to minimize how important that is, and it's not like a dopamine thing for the content creator. It allows us to kind of not forget you exist out there, so that when those job posts kind of roll in front of us, or we hear about, oh, our org's hiring and da 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 da, it's like, oh, I know this person, and they're over there saying, here's what's they might establish yourself as the expert too, kind of like get yourself out there and put content. Like this week I learned this as I was onboarding. Somebody's behind you and you're in the journey. You may have that first role where you've been there 2 months. Somebody is trying to get to where you are, and they want to have their 2-month point too. So you're the expert for them. And
I would say to be specific, just to kind of ride on your coattails a little bit. Sometimes we make connections and we're being really vague or broad, because maybe we're making a lot of connections, and that's totally okay. I coming from a recruiter background, you're gonna send out a lot of email or a lot of PMs or whatever on LinkedIn. But I would say if there's something that you really, really want, be specific with that person that you're making contact with, so that they actually know how to help you, right? And if you're reaching out to somebody in recruiting, or you're working out, with somebody who's in TA, assume that they have no idea about that job. Assume that they don't manage that job. They know nothing about that job. And it will actually require work for them to go and to look up that job ID and to find the, just lay that out there for all the recruiters. I've got your back, and for the job seekers, right? So let's be specific. Like, I saw this job, this is exactly what I'm looking for, and make sure that, you're intentional in those conversations.
And then also, if you don't hear back, it doesn't mean they don't want to help. It just means they might not be on LinkedIn, or the more a following grows, the in-mail at LinkedIn is really, really messy. So if you can, if you can even ask for email address, and sometimes a lot of people will give that, and that's the best way to have those conversations as well. But
I agree. Yep.
All right, I loved your point about getting to know what's happening elsewhere in the company, and so how does I guess if you're getting to know what's happening all over, like the Disney org for you, how do you bring that back to your own seat to kind of to share or enlighten your team on things that you're learning? I feel like that's a good leadership piece, is to collect.
Like, how do I hold them accountable? So I mean, that's how I'm hearing it, but maybe I'm wrong. But so I am a new leader with where somebody actually pays me to lead other people. I have 8 direct reports, and I I love one-on-ones. I communicate often, and I probably over communicate. I'm extremely honest with them about, whatever circumstances are, or whatever's happening in the moment. I encourage them I'm like, this is something I'm doing. Do you want to join me? This is something that I'm a part of. Do you want to do it with me? I'm very much a let's have a buddy kind of person. And then I'm always asking them, how are we doing? Is there anything I can do to support you better? Is there anything you want to learn or grow in? So something that I do is I bucket my time to look for intentional learning for my team. So, I don't know what other leaders are doing. This is just something that I do at my desk, but I bucket the time specifically in my focus time to say, okay, this is what, so-and-so would really enjoy. And I think we could maybe help them, do this a little better. And maybe we'll have a conversation about that and see how they feel about it. Because I manage early career, which means that my job is to get them out. My job is to grow them up. My job is to hopefully retain their knowledge and within our segment within TA, but my job for you is to help grow you, to coach you, to mentor you, and to grow you out, because it's early career, right? I know that I only have a limited amount of time with you, so I want that time to be very impactful. So that's I guess I hope that's answering the question, but yes, that's sort of how I do
No,
it.
I really like that. Especially prioritizing the learning and growth. Is that mostly around like the D&I type topics or in the like professional?
I mean, both. I mean, in every scope, I think in early career, sometimes you can see a miss in soft skills because they literally just don't have the experience yet to grow the professional soft skills, right? So there's a lot of that, like helping them understand that communication piece from a professional component. So maybe if I see that, like, and Disney has, we have our own learning, like every large organization. We have tons of free content, that they can participate in. Sometimes they're pre-recorded, sometimes there's a session that they can join, but like everything from like how to write an email, right? How to write a professional email, right? That's probably one of the best classes I've ever taken in my career because we get really used to text and, social media, and there's a language around that that's sort of this unspoken language around that. And that can, if you're on social media a lot, that can transfer into your professional scape. That's no matter the age, no matter the career level, that can definitely transfer over. So that's the kind of a passion for me to help them kind of navigate, how do we come across more professionally? How do we also find that relationship piece in your communication, that softness, you know what I mean? But without, making it super casual, right? With like lots of memes and, emojis and stuff like that. Excuse my language. So yeah, and then sometimes it's hard skills. Sometimes we just need to learn about Microsoft 365 Suite. Maybe we just need to brush up on our Excel skills. Maybe we actually do need some more hard skills that we haven't participated in a lot. Another thing that I'm working on is helping them grow their executive presence. So helping them understand what it is to be present, right, and to have a presence, right, in front of leaders and in front of peers and colleagues and large groups.
Had to chuckle when you brought up the email because that was the most intimidating thing on day 2 of my job, was to look at my inbox. And it was because everybody had they did bullet points and links, and I was like,
what's happening in
it's
here?
got to take an hour to form an email at this company, and I'm over here wanting to put a smiley at the end of everything. And I'm not talking about the clicky cute one, I'm talking the colon with the parentheses, because I'm a little old school that way, and I was like, maybe I should not emoji here. And there are places, there's appropriate times you can, but you need to really learn even that little piece. So
absolutely.
So I guess what I'm hearing overall is like the leadership seems to be built in how do you support and elevate other people. It's almost like taking yourself out of the equation and looking at what can you do for others.
It's 100% about that. I mean, in my opinion, again, this is my opinion. I know everybody's a little different, but I don't actually believe leadership is about me. I happen to be a strong leader because I have removed myself from the equation. Mm-hmm. And yes, I have a path and growth, but that's going to happen, because that's just what's going to happen, right? That's just how it's going to be. Yes. But I believe that more than 60% of my job is to lead others. And what does that look like in their individual paths? And that's an honor, right? That for me is an honor. That's a privilege. That's not normal, right? And I'm not a political person when it comes to navigating the workforce. I am authentic, and I am bold. I usually say things that, everyone's thinking, but don't know how to say it. That's me kind of in a nutshell at the workplace. So, but I think that there's room for that too, right? And we need it. We need people to be able to speak up and say and be challengers, right? And I believe now that I'm a leader and I'm managing others, it's my job to also do that for them.
Yeah, that's really awesome. It kind of, last week I was doing a presentation on my team where we do like a D&I, just educational learning thing. And I was looking at personality types and how can we feel included based on how different we are. So like you're describing your leadership. I'm like, that sounds so exhausting. But then, it's kind of making me realize, it's just a personality type difference where it's like, oh, and I say that even though I'm constantly like trying to give back. It's very insightful. I love that approach of 60% of your time is elevating other people, and it's kind of making me realize that even in my day job, like how much percentage of my time am I devoting towards making sure I'm customer focused in the solutions we deliver and building better experiences all around.
Yeah, and like, well, we can be very siloed, from going back to being home, right? Like, it's very easy to get stuck in your space. And I think if we can just remove, like, what can I do to serve somebody else today? Like, the conversation changes, the outcome changes. If I'm like helping my team, that is a big portion of my job, right? So what's exhausting for me, I think, is well, I'm a high energy person in general, but I think what's exhausting for me is just sort of like you're adding all of that you have all these personal relationships. I think that's what I found. One of the downsides of being a leader is that I have these personal relationships with my team, and then I'm also pouring into my spouse, and I'm also, pouring into my kids. So finding that balance where it's like, okay, I need to pour into me now, right? Like, because maybe I've removed myself a bit too much from this. So that's kind of my current challenge, is trying to figure out what that looks like for me.
Yeah, you beat me to my next question, because like, okay, you're pouring constantly into other people. How do you kind of recharge or make sure you're balancing on that mental health side to make sure that
not well. I mean, I'm just gonna be honest. Like, I'm not well. Like, I'm not good at this. This is actually something that I struggle in. I struggle with rest. I struggle with balance. It's something I aim for. It's something I want. But I do think that, like, sometimes it's not something that really exists. And I'm trying to lean into, instead of excusing it, right, saying I just have to basically plan for it, right? So that's sort of the season I'm in right now. Like, I'm planning for fun things for me to do, because something that as an extrovert, I get recharged by being around my friends and, being around people. So if I can make a plan to do that and I have something to look forward to, it recharges me. I am terrible at sitting still. I am terrible at actually saying, okay, like, my sister, who actually, she works at Microsoft, she's like, Lisa, do you have any hobbies? You need a hobby. And I'm like, I'm obsessed with my Peloton bike, and I really love working out. But my sister's like, that's not a hobby, that's working out. And I was like, well, look, it's something I enjoy, and it brings me like energy. And that's what I need more of. It helps me have more energy. So sometimes, though, in this community, it's like, okay, in my Peloton community, it's like, okay, but you can have an active rest day. So I'm trying to apply that to everything. So maybe I just do a very easy 20-minute ride. It's moving my body, but I'm not exerting myself, right? And I'm giving myself the patience and the time and the rest that I need, right? I'm trying to apply that at home too. So, and at work. So maybe I can go into, I can look and go do one of the trainings for 20 minutes, and I'm just focusing on like something that's a soft skill that I can just watch for myself. And that's restful for me. So I think just finding little buckets of time, here and there, walking away from my desk, going outside when it's actually sunny, in our state, for 10 minutes, sitting outside for 10 minutes, has been really helpful, too.
That's awesome. We are about halfway through. Does anybody have any questions? I really would love to know. You have a recruiter and someone who's a team leader, so I'm right here at your bidding. So otherwise, I might start calling on people.
And you can also reach out to me after too, if anybody's not, if you're not feeling brave enough, that's fine.
Yeah, towards the end, I usually do, if you want to pop your LinkedIn profiles on here, I love to use this as an opportunity to expand and grow our networks as well. So I'm happy to do that. I see we do have someone typing, but like, I hear a lot about everyone should have a 30, 60, 90-day plan when they're starting a new role. Do you abide by that, or do you feel like do you have any kind of footprint for what that would look like?
I do. We have sort of a formal model that we use at work. I am trying to establish a little different. I'm of course going against the grain, or away from the grain, or whatever that statement is. But
Parallel to the grain.
parallel to the grain. I want to do 360 reviews. I want to keep myself accountable to the people that I'm managing because I have so much influence over their path. So something that I am implementing is it's not just about the goals that I'm doing that I have for myself and those benchmarks and those milestones, but it's also like how giving me the feedback on how I can do something better, how I can help them more, how I can support them more, or what I'm doing that's another failure for them, frankly, right? Like this isn't working for me. I I care about that because I want to be a stronger leader, and I don't think that we can do that unless we actually make space for other people to give us feedback. So that's something. So to your question, yes, but I also I don't like I don't like too much structure when it comes to because my path has not been linear. I've said this I think since I was very young, but you know I am an open hands person, so I want to do what comes naturally to me, and the thing that interests me the most, because that's where then I am going to do my best work. I know that there are seasons where you don't have a choice. You know, you're in early career and you're just learning and you're still growing and you don't really like this job, but you know that you want to do this next thing. Well, that's all perfectly fine and good. But I found that if I hold too tightly to those future goals, then I am not open to what might be right in front of me or the path pivoting.
Oh, that's a great
So,
point.
right. So, I mean, I started at Disney just last year. I'll share this. And this is not usual, but I started as a coordinator. I started in an early career position. Like I said, I had a big gap, even though I had all this experience. But within 30 days, no, within, sorry, 60 days, I had already been promoted to a specialist, project management specialist role. And then 6 to 9 months later, they asked me to lead this team as an associate manager. So within under a year, I mean, I celebrate a year back to work in May, I've already launched twice. And that's not me making 30, 60, 90 plans. That's me saying, what's next? That's me establishing myself with people. That's me having authentic relationships. That's me telling honestly and openly what I want, right? I decided when I came back, I was going to be brave. That was my only goal. I'm just going to be brave. And what does brave look like? Well, for me, that meant having a lot of brave conversations and saying to VPs, I'm a leader and that's my goal, whatever that looks like, whenever that happens. That's the conversation. It's not, this is my 30, 60, 90. This is what I meant to do. You let me know when that can happen.
Wow. I love that. I love that. Especially often women, we are often very guilty about not advocating for ourselves. And I've had to learn a lot of lessons on that one.
Yes.
All right. There are a lot of things coming in chat. So I'm going to just catch up on that.
Sure.
Catherine says that she loves to work from home and she likes to, when she needs to step outside to visit her 1-year-old chickens. So that's awesome. Yeah. Oh. And Adrian is a fellow chicken owner, so I know he also steps outside sometimes to deal with chickens or protect them from hawks trying to swoop in. So, all right. So one question is, how would you position a returnship on a resume if you're in a more senior position? Like, does the returnship, I guess the heart of it is, does it always look like a step back? And how would you avoid this perception on your resume or LinkedIn profile? And I think you even kind of alluded to this as maybe when you first got in, you might have taken that step back and then really launched quickly because you're like, you hired me below where I should have been hired. I'm not going to stay here. So
basically, yeah, you put your money where your mouth is, right? Like if you are a senior person, then we have to stop focusing so much on titles. Now, I understand that sometimes we need to, right? There's a financial component and other livelihood components that, you know, I can't really speak to. Those are individual situations. But I think we focus a lot on titles. And I personally am not a fan. um, I I believe, like I said, I will lead from every seat. So as a coordinator in an entry level position, I'm around the reason I'm standing out, the reason I'm getting noticed is because I am working at my level, right? So the work that I am producing is at my actual level, which is not a coordinator level. So I could very well bounce up. And in fact, those conversations, by the way, started when I was 3 weeks into coming back. Why? Because it's clear that she's not a coordinator, right? So they're bringing me full to where I'm supposed to be, right? Right now, I'm just catching up, right? To where I was when I left. So if you have a returnship, first of all, what is the relationship like with the person that you're about the job? So be honest, be authentic. Most companies now, at least some of the better, larger companies, don't actually care about gaps, right? Because we don't, the resume is a profile of what your combined experience is, but the relationship is a totally different thing. And the way you speak to it and the way you produce is a completely other thing, right? So don't be afraid to maybe take a lower title if you know that you're more senior, because you're not going to stay stuck in those situations for very long. You're going to launch out of it, right? At least that was my experience. I don't know, Jacqueline, if you feel like that's true for you.
Well, like I had such a 20-year gap, so I had so much
Yeah.
onboarding to do and then even the academy that I was part of, I was learning one whole skill set and then hired to do something completely different. So I truly think I spent the first 6 months with the Charlie Brown teacher over my head going, wah, and occasionally I would hear a word that I understood and I was like, I know what a query is, I know what that is. So like I felt like there was really a ramp up space for me that I had to go through, and a lot of again, I alluded to it with professional emails, like intimidating, but there was so much. I have a post scheduled on LinkedIn coming out at one point where I I needed to just grow so much in that first year, but it was about confidence too. Like I spent the first year afraid I would have to pay back my sign-on bonus because they were going to find out I was a fraud and fire me. So I was scared to spend it almost. Yeah, and so it took a while for me to realize that I had a supportive team,
Yeah.
but that was Jacqueline's growth piece. So, and I actually might have been hired higher than I should have been for where I was. So
Right.
I had to kind of grow into that
Right.
role as opposed to being,
First.
I
Right.
did not take a step back. But
Right.
I, it's like your self-confidence, I guess, can bring you so far until you stop believing it yourself, right? It's like, oh,
And
I'm self-confident here, but not here. And I had to build that it's okay to ask questions. It's okay to I had to there was no there was no me pretending to know that more than I did. It was very much, I don't know what you're talking about right now. Can you please
right.
back up and explain it to me? So
Right.
had I not reached out for that help. So that's another point is 30, 69 days. Ask the question. For goodness sake, ask the question. And so I did develop a rule for myself. If I'm struggling for something more than an hour, it's time to reach out because I'm wasting company time. I'm wasting my time. I'm wasting everybody's time by
Absolutely.
thinking it's going to come to me when I don't know the answer.
I'm very fortunate to just be also a person that just says, I don't know how to do that. Can you show me? Or can I so again, that relationship piece, like, can we spend 30 minutes going over this? I still don't understand. Right.
Yeah.
And now that is more the case now that I'm doing stretch work that I haven't done before. Right. But earlier on, because I had the reverse, I was just basically leading everybody else how to do their jobs better. At the time, right? Because it was second nature to me, right? But again, you're gonna have to like decide for yourself, like, what's more important. Is the title more important, or is coming back to work and showing what you are capable of more important, right? So you have to get, be real about that, right? With yourself, and don't let pride get in the way, because I think pride can kind of get in the way. Like, well, I should really be, well, yeah, you should, but show me that you can do it, right? If that's a job that you want, if that's a career path that you want, you're going to have to also come to terms with, like, well, here's what we're dealing with, right? And I think it's okay to be honest about that in the interview. and say, look, I have this gap. I understand, I would say that I am more senior, but because I'm very excited about this opportunity, I would like to have that opportunity to show you what I can do. Can we revisit this, in 6 months or whatever it is?
All right, and we have even more questions. Amberish is asking, like, how do you get noticed and like as an artist if you're by companies like Disney, Marvel, if you do not accept unsolicited submissions? Oh, is that an Adrian? You got an answer on this one? He was a producer at one point for
Please, then you're
games.
definitely more versed.
That was I used to work in the video game industry, and I can say a big part of this is while they don't take unsolicited, there usually is a submission mechanism that you can go through to put your portfolio there. And I would say the two things you want to show is, one, you want to tailor your portfolio towards the type of job you're doing. Like if you want to be a Disney animator and all you have is comic book stuff in your portfolio, it's not really going to go well. That being said, it is important to demonstrate a wide variety of skills. So make sure you're not just drawing, like I love Batman, but my portfolio shouldn't be entirely of Batman in a Jim Lee style. I want to be demonstrating that I have knowledge of classical painting techniques. I have an understanding of color theory. I have an understanding of light, shadow, perspective, the basic fundamentals of art. And then on top of that, you're building what is indicative of your style and your passion and how you feel like the role can fit you in that. So I would say a lot of the portfolios that I used to see, in passing that were more successful were one of those things where the person was demonstrating a good skill set, but also there was an undercurrent of a very specific style and goal that they were looking towards. The other one I would say is, I don't know if this is true for other industries, but for video games, at GDC in San Francisco once a year, if you're able to get there, a guy I used to work with named Gavin Golden, and he worked at Irrational with me. Another guy, Greg Forsch, who used to work at Firaxis on XCOM. They would usually run a portfolio review, just open session for the entirety of GDC, and folks could come by and get their portfolios reviewed by what are effectively art directors in the video game industry. So whatever industry you're in, if it's Disney for animation or print or whatever, I would find out what are the trade shows, what are the conferences, and see if there are any portfolio reviews or workshops. Those can often be a great place for specific targeted advice. Mine is as general as I can get, trying to be applicable to all. But I mean, if you're trying to be a Disney level animator, that's a whole entire skill set I don't have. And animation portfolios are going to want to demonstrate a wide variety of things that I didn't even mention. They're going to want to understand speed, momentum, gravity, reactionary movement, things that I remember from my 101 animation class that are completely orthogonal to art style.
Right.
Yeah, and I would also point. I'm sorry, back to LinkedIn. Like, make sure you're adding the people who I've heard. One of my guests said, you add 3 types of people to your network: the people who are doing what you want to do, the people who hire the people that do what you want to do, and the managers that you would have. So the recruiter, the manager, and the colleague. Look for those, and then watermark your work and put it on LinkedIn and show it off. Like, or any, it doesn't have to be LinkedIn, social media, TikTok. You could do a video where you're like, hey, I just drew this and this is why. Social media, if you put it out there, eventually people tend to find you. Make sure you use good hashtags like animation or whatever you may do. Sorry, Lisa, you probably had some great insights as well.
Yeah, I mean, not from that particular space, but I will say that I echo what Adrian and Jacqueline are both saying. Not just that, but like the work part of it when you're on the outside looking in. And I would say that even for internals who, this might be a passion of theirs, but maybe it's like not their actual job, right? They just work for this large organization. It always comes back to relationship. Every single thing you want to do comes back to relationship. So you've got to develop those relationships. You've got to develop your presence. You've got to develop your brand. You've got to develop your LinkedIn profile. You've got to, whatever that looks like, grow yourself in those spaces, because if they know about you before you contact them, that's a game changer. And that is within your control. What is not within your control are other people. What is in your control is yourself and the work that you're willing to put into it. And when they talk about it's work, it is work, like different level work. And you have to have the energy to do that, right? At least that's my 2 cents. I think from a personal standpoint, anything you want, anything you want, whether you have it or you don't have it, it's going to take a lot of work, and you're going to have to find out what it is to get you in front of those people. What is it?
Yeah. I actually had to laugh at myself recently because I was doing all these posts on employment gaps and overcoming them and stuff. And I was never posting about what I actually do in my day job. Like, what does it take to be a PM? And there are always people behind you on the journey. So I have, if they're trying to overcome a career gap and they want to get into PM, like learning what words and acronyms and things to look at are all really important, and that just as important. But I was never establishing myself as a great PM. I was establishing myself as a really great military spouse or a great employment gap person. So
it's completely unrelated, right? Completely unrelated.
Wait a minute, why don't I ever talk about, what I've learned, all these pieces of that story that are so vital. So okay, we have a lot of, thank you everyone for the questions, by the way. Let me try and keep moving here a little bit. A fellow workaholic has trouble turning off. Any tips or tricks? That's not my problem. So I'm gonna boot that to someone else.
What was the question again? Sorry.
If, like, a fellow workaholic would love some tips or tricks on turning off.
Oh gosh, turning off. Well, you literally have to just do it. I have to tell everybody I am leaving at 5 o'clock, or I am no longer available right at this time. And I am a workaholic. I am. It's not something I'm proud about. I don't think grind culture is something we should be used to. I think it affects a lot of our mental health and our actual physical health, our relationships with other people. But I actually love to work. That's the thing. I actually love it. And so finding that balance, I think you have to allow yourself the grind, but you also have to allow yourself the time off, right? So we have a conference coming up in May, and I've never been away from my kids for longer than, I think, 4 days. And my oldest just turned 8. And my husband and I are about to celebrate 10 years of marriage on May 17th. And my my company we're going down for a management conference. It's a whole week. It's right over my 10-year, in the state that we actually got married in. And my husband's like, oh, this is perfect. You're already going to be there. I'll meet you after the conference. You'll take the week off. We'll have this thing. Da 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 da. Why am I freaking out about this? I have so much PTO that I can totally take a week off of work. It also comes up against Memorial Day weekend. But why am I having so much trouble? Well, because I am terrified of what a week of actual rest, potentially on a beach, looks like for this crazy brain, right? So I get it. I do. And my managers are all like, no, you need to do this. Of course, this is gratuitous. You got to do it. We want you to go. So I think just doing it, even if it's uncomfortable. Once again, if that is an area of growth for you, then you should challenge yourself in that area to go against what is natural, which is to work, and to say, what's unnatural for me is that I want to turn off my computer at 5 o'clock. So I'm going to do that because that's better for everybody, especially me.
Yeah. I definitely had a role where I was more on all the time because I felt like I had to monitor email for things that were going wrong. But I learned to leave the phone in the other room and walk away. That also helps. But Adrian, you have some perspective?
Yeah, it's something. Sorry, going back to video games, I used to be exactly like this. But I would posit also that if you're a workaholic, it's because you want to perform well at your job and you want to be seen as someone that's worthy of career promotion. The more you work, the more you burn yourself out, the more you make the small mistakes day to day. And in the long term, you will burn yourself out and you will lose that passion for your job. So if you want to be effective in your job, having time away from it and hobbies that are orthogonal and in today's day and age, analog, is a way to recharge and make yourself better and more productive during that working time. So, we always used to say in art school, don't work hard, work smart. I think that applies to the time you spend at your desk as well versus the time you spend away from it. It is not detrimental to your job to not be actively doing it. And oftentimes doing that too much can have the inverse consequence.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I have already experienced it. So I think that is so nail on the head, which is why, it's actually going to be going into my commitments for me to make this a goal, because I know that's ridiculous, but it really is. Like, they're not benefiting from my being a burnout. I'm not benefiting from being a burnout. So the rest that we are incorporating actually helps you work better. And me having to say that to myself is crazy, but it's like absolutely essential.
I love all this. It's such gold. Also some growth areas where that I'm like, oh yeah, I had to learn that, and I learned it the hard way. So it's like the pandemic was not kind. It was not kind. I am putting some LinkedIn chats or links in there, so feel free to connect with each other. That's one of the reasons I do this too, is to build each other's network. Let's see. I have one question here, and it's very specific on trying to go from a stage scheduler into a recruitment coordinator role. Like, what would be the next step? So that goes to pivots, which I am happy to speak on as well. But if you would like to take it first.
Yeah, I mean, I've hired every coordinator at Disney for the last 8 months. So it's a space that I sat in for, I know just this last stint for just a couple of months, but that's where I started my career, was as a coordinator. And let me share that this was, I know we're recording and I probably shouldn't put myself out there, but this is important to me too. So from a DE&I perspective, we a lot of the time we think about things, as, color or, orientation or whatever. But it's not, there's components to DE&I that I think we forget. And one of them is academia. Being able to have a degree is a privilege in this country. Being able to have a life that supports so that you can actually finish your degree and finish your education, you have to assume a lot, right, to be able to get to that. I don't have my college degree. And so I had a lot of challenges in my own mind. I'm like, okay, I can do this. I'm skilled. I have the ability to type fast. I have, my family, we are legacy Microsoft. Jacqueline, I don't know if I ever told you this. My mom worked at Microsoft for almost 20 years, and she was a matriarch in graphic design for a lot of things. My sister is a big wig over there. I don't even know what she does, but she does some pretty incredible things. She's been there for, almost 20 years. So my mom didn't have a college degree, and she was self-taught as a graphic artist. So I sort of followed that footstep because I had a lot of my own challenges, but I didn't have a life to support to be able to finish. So I had to do everything on my own. I had to figure out, who are you? What are you good at? What do you like? What do you want to work towards? And recently I'm sharing that I'm honest about this space, because I think that we think that pedigree is everything, and it's not. It's not. It's you. It's what you can do with the life that you've been given, with the resources that you have, and what you actually are learning on the job, sans that degree, right? Corporate education it's not valuable to my company right now for me to even have a degree. It's not. Am I going to finish? Yeah, because they're going to pay for it, right? And I have the time now. But it's not actually valuable to them right now for me to have it. So I bring that up because I think it's really vital for us to understand that you already have it in you to be able to do that work as you are. Mm-hmm. Again, it comes back to the relationship. If you're interested in being a coordinator and maybe you've been an admin for a long time, guess what? You just need to get somebody like me on the phone, which I will commonly say, you want to do this? Okay, here's your opportunity. I can hire you as a coordinator, no problem. But what are you going to do? What are you going to do in that space? Right? So I think any pivot is an opportunity to say, I have never done this thing, but I know I can do this thing. Will you give me an opportunity?
Yes, I love it. And also on like I say this a lot, so if people come regularly, you've probably heard me already say it. Google power words.
Yeah.
like power verbs for resumes, because what I did is I actually I made a resume for myself, but more like an inventory of everything I did in life, even as a stay-at-home mom. I could argue that going to the grocery store is asset management and project management and all of these various aspects of things that come into play elsewhere. So you may already have experience doing the things that you think you don't have experience on, but if you inventory it and really look at what did being a parent director for my kids' school play, what skills did I use in that? And then you compare it to the power verbs for resumes, and you'll start seeing leadership, coordination, like pantry, asset management. You So many of those things translate, and we don't give ourselves credit for the small things that we've done, seemingly small things we've done. Like I was actually in the interview with Microsoft when I realized I had done product management before as a personal trainer. And then it changed the entire course of the interview, because I was like, wait, I've done product management before. My product was just people. But you're still, every person that came in for training was presenting with a problem. And that may not be actually the root cause of what's going on. Like if they say I need to lose weight, there's actually a driver beyond that. Maybe it's a legit health problem that they were diagnosed with. Maybe it's their knees hurt when they go up and down stairs. But both of those things are different approaches to how I would build a program for them. So
they are transferable. I think that's
yes.
really important. I think the practical application of that is, what does your resume look like? Are we highlighting the things that actually pertain to the job description?
Yes. Yes.
You've likely already done the work, right? You've likely already been doing it, or in some capacity, to your point, Jacqueline. I call out on my resume that I was a stay-at-home mom for almost 7 years, and I list all of the duties that I was responsible for, in addition to all the areas that I volunteered or I worked part-time or whatever. I mean, I helped people get jobs while I was not an actual recruiter.
Right. I was trying to help somebody this week on LinkedIn, and I reached out to someone with a job posting, and they've responded back pretty quick. Like, we don't use external recruiters. You just need to go through our internal recruiters. And then I was like, wait, can I clarify? I'm not a recruiter. I just like to help people. And it changed the conversation, but it was really funny where I came across as a recruiter, even though I'm not. So, I could probably get a recruiting job if I really wanted one, just by the work that I do on LinkedIn, with helping people. So like, do not discount what you've done. I will say that 1,000 times over, because it's just so important to acknowledge it. And it's confidence building for you, like to go through the exercise of acknowledging that you're a rock star in small things. Can really just change the mental energy that you put toward, switches it from, oh, can I do this job? I don't know if I can do this job, to, you know what? I've done that. Like, they want me. So,
yeah, they do.
Sometimes the biggest battle might be selling yourself to yourself rather than to someone else.
But then if you do, like, again, if you need help with your resume, like, Google everything, there are so many articles out there. For those of you who are moms or caregivers, there's a great organization called the Mom Project, which I started following before I came back to work, and they are a great resource. There are lots of returnship programs. We have one actually at Disney that we're establishing. I know Microsoft does it, Amazon does it. I know that I think I heard recently that I think Pinterest might do it. So there's actually more opportunities than ever for people. You just have to do your work, do your research, and find it. It's out there. I am special in my own right, but I am not that special. I'm special in my own right, but I am not that special. Like, we are all better than I think that we give ourselves credit for. And the people around us, while they might be impressive, they're not that impressive, right? So I think it's important to say that, because that sort of helps remove that imposter syndrome, and it makes it more like we're all in this together, right? People have so much more compassion than you actually realize. I have exactly 3 minutes until I need to get into a meeting. So
Well, I just wanted to take this time then just to thank you so much for having this conversation. It was extremely insightful, and
absolutely.
just thank you. Like this is wonderful. And then let's see. I will since there's some resources and links on chat, I will hang out here for a little bit longer. I don't have a call immediately right after, but we'll have to grab you and have you back at some point
Please.
because this was so much fun. So
Love it. I could talk about this all day. I just don't have all day to talk about it.
I get that impression with you, and I'm glad you can, because I'm like, wow, your energy level is like, it's like opening and draining mine. Just
Like you, I know. People tell me that, like, you're a lot of energy. I need a break from you for a few hours.
No, it's you're the kind of person that would adopt me and bring me on the adventure of a lifetime. While I'm like, I don't know if we should be doing that.
Like, you're gonna do it. Here we go.
Yeah. All right. Yes, thank you everyone for joining. I will go ahead and stop the recording now, but I can hang out for a little bit longer if anybody has specific questions.